And hello, Orville Nation. We have a very, very special guest today. You know who he is, and here we go, guys. And hello, Orville Nation. Welcome, everybody. It's great to see all of you. And we have a very, very special Latchcomb today. And we have one of our favorite Orvillians dropping by. It's going to be a real treat. And let's take a look real quick. Let's see who's here. Do me a favor, guys. Please share this out. This is going to be very interesting. And please share this out as when you get a chance. Hello, Chuck. Good to see you. Chuck Marble. Good to see you, Galinda. And Maria is on the panel and in the chat. Yes, and again, hello, Lydia from Orville 24/7. Ben Thatcher in the house. Jessica Castillo. Good to see you, Jessica. Netters Network. She is everywhere as well. She is also on the panel. Hello, Shane. Nice of you to join us. And let's see else. I just want to make sure we catch everybody in here. John DeMarco is in here. Have you caught that blue Luminite yet, John? We're probably going to be talking some Luminites later. John has a great Luminite background for his streaming. Hello, Jonathan Myers. Good to see you. Kapla, Bird of Prey. Good to see you, Bird of Prey. And Dan Crane, good to see you, my friend. JPRPH1. Oh, I almost said it right. JPRPH1. Good to see you, JPRPH1. And John Sapola, good to see you. Sir Goosey, good to see everyone. Luis Sparrow. And I cannot go back any further. So you guys are welcome. Welcome, everybody. Nate jumping in here. Good to see you, Nate. All right, let's bring in first of all our the hostess with the mostest. You guys know her as TN Telly. Welcome to Maria from TN Telly. How are you, Maria?
Well, it's good to see you here. Good. What? Good to be here.
Wow, what a treat! We're going to be talking to two of the geniuses behind in like 3 days.
I know.
Two geniuses behind everything, right? In the Orville.
That's what I said. How lucky can I be on that? That was wow. That's good.
Yeah. And Maria had Eric Hayden on her channel the other day, and that was very interesting. And of course, that is on Maria's channel. You guys can watch that on replay. And let's bring in ladies first. Somebody who is an up and coming channel, and I see as a future leader in our community. Welcome to Netter. Welcome, Netter.
Hi. How are you guys?
It's an honor for you to join us, my friend. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. And of course, the pleasure is always mine to be here. I love being on your channel.
Yeah. Well, the pleasure is ours.
Love being on Maria's channel too. Her channel is fun too.
And do you want to tell us real quick what's coming up on your channel?
Oh, let's see. I do have some videos that I'm editing right now that it's a series, so I'm hoping to have them all finished by the end of the month so I can start dropping those down. They're basically my bathroom and kitchen renovation for beginners who have no clue what they're doing.
Wow.
This will hopefully help them not to make any mistakes like I made on some of mine, but also maybe give some helpful hints on, hey, this is an easy way to do this, and this is an easy way to do that. And basically, I did my bathroom and kitchen renovation for under $500. Quick, easy paint, hardware, and Fablon, basically. And if I can do it, and I know nothing about remodeling, anyone can do it.
Wow. Okay. Wow. So that is, yeah. Your videos are actually very helpful. That's interesting.
Well, that's part of my shtick. It's helpful hints.
And let's bring in the other Pacelli. You know him from so many times on Orville Nation and on his own channel and wherever else he shows up. Welcome to Troy Pacelli. Good to see you, my friend.
Salud. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Salud. It's an honor to have everybody here, this panel here. And I want to say, Troy, tell us real quick what's coming up on your channel.
Well, I'm hoping to have some custom toy builds up, possibly even this week. But if not, then in the next couple weeks. I've been working on quite a few of them. But if I don't get to anything sooner, obviously, yeah, she wants to show off one of the custom toys I did.
Yeah,
specifically for her. That's a one of a kind. That's R2R0, also called R2R Not. One of her Star Wars role-playing game characters that I turned into an action figure for her.
That's cool, man. That's cool.
This Friday, my regular live stream last call, I will be having guest co-host Fanzine. That's Fanzcene. And we're going to be talking about, well, his channel, and we will be talking about owning physical media because it is incredibly important. Netter is showing off a small portion of our collection behind her.
Yeah, we own over 1,000 movies, so.
Wow. Yep. Wow. Yeah, that is, and that makes it for a great background too for your streaming. All right, guys. Thank you. I want to just say hello to Kai. I see there's jumped in here, and douchebag Kylo, and Brandon. I don't call our audience douchebags. That's his name. So I don't he's worrying about what kind of show he's just come on to. Good to everybody else. Dave's Dominion, our Ghostbuster friend, and everybody else who's popping in here. Who are Tink from Orville 24/7 as well. So welcome everybody, and welcome to everybody else who jumps in. And it's time to introduce somebody who has been an integral part of the Orville, and he has been there from the beginning. He has. It's not every day you talk to a professional who has a strong background in Trek, Wars, and Orville. You name it. Brandon Fayette has been involved in it. Welcome, Brandon.
Oh no! All right, see ya. Hey everybody.
It's an honor to have you here, Brandon.
14 questions. No, I'm kidding. Hi. It's nice to be here. It's the as I was saying, offline, it's the first full weekend I've had off in over a year.
Oh my gosh.
So it's nice to spend time with people virtually or whenever. I may think most of our world's kind of gone half virtual at this point. So
even though it's a good busy, it's still exhausting though, I'm sure.
I've been catching up on sleep, which is nice. I forgot what that was like. I got 7 hours last night. And I was like,
gosh, that's good.
The bags under the eyes are slightly less dark. This is good.
Can you tell us what exactly is your title on the Orville production cast crew?
I'm the visual effects supervisor, so I'm the top. I'm the person that gets yelled at if you don't like anything. Brooke was our visual effects supervisor, our visual effects co-supervisor and producer. Eric was our visual effects co-supervisor. So it's kind of like, that was the main trio. We had Adam and Taylor and Lauren and Peter and Chris and George and, just a huge, massive amount of people, Olivia and just all these wonderful people on the VFX team. There's 10 of us at any given point. And I'm the one that basically had to put it all together and hope that it worked. So between Tom, you know, like I was the department head essentially on Orville. So, you know,
wow.
Not sure if that panned out. It seems like you guys like the effects, so I guess I did okay. But
did we like the effects, guys? Really?
Yeah.
The first shot I ever did that was like me trying to prove like the style I wanted to push that Seth was interested in was the hug the donkey shot in season 1, the pilot. I was like, this would be fun if we did this technique. And so yeah, I started on the Orville pre-production of season 1. So one of the first things I did was design the Krill destroyer and come up with the look of the Krill. And yeah, Pretty Okay is about how I feel every Tuesday. But yeah, you know, so I work with Tom and Seth and John Cassar and all the other directors. And, you know, the kind of what we do is we take it from the script to pre-visualization, taking the pre-visualization to final picture. And I make sure the ships look good. If they don't look good, that's my fault too. So I'll take all the negative comments and you can leave Eric and Brooke and everybody else alone. Just blame me. All the positive comments, they were all involved in. Everybody was there. We had such an incredibly awesome team of just absolutely stellar people. And I wouldn't have gotten through this season if it wasn't for them. So I'm a piece of that puzzle. We're all a team. And obviously Seth is the maestro that pulled all the strings. But yes, I was the department head.
Brandon, so, I'm gonna put up a picture just to break the ice a little bit. And you can tell us a little bit about this picture. I think everybody who knows you from Twitter is anticipating one of these pictures. This is not one you shared with me. I got this one online. Sorry.
Oh yeah, that's the one I hate with a passion. Yes. This was I was on a DeLorean like interview over the pandemic, and the guy's like, "Can you take photos of yourself with the car?" And I'm like, "Oh God." I didn't even bother doing anything with my hair. I was like, fine. So yeah, there you go.
It's a great picture though.
It's the worst picture ever. Yeah, there you go.
What I will do, and I know everybody's been wanting to ask DeLorean questions. Maybe we can just start with that hobby of yours, and I will put up a few pictures that Brendan shared just now. Before.
Well, sure. I mean, I've always wanted a DeLorean. I bought one about 6 years ago. Had 6,000 miles on it. Now has 20,000 miles on it. I drive it every day. So I didn't buy it to sit and collect dust. I've 3D printed a lot of new pieces for it in the community.
Really?
Of the DeLorean. People have done it. Yeah, everything from like cup holders to replacement parts that don't exist anymore. I've recreated the taillights, which are hard to get, given the files of the community. So yeah, that's my car.
Wow.
There you go.
Well, it sat on a dock for a year, so it got really corroded, like
the original
internals. Yeah, the original.
Yeah.
So it's like a lot of the parts were corroded. And then I found out they had like Chevy engine parts, because I used to have one. And it's like, it wasn't really feasible after we had 2 kids. So it's like, okay, we got rid of it.
Yeah, no, this one's, it drives like brand new. I mean, that's what it looks like. There's the only thing that happens to them over time, because I have the original paint on the fascias in the front, is that they get these little like quizzical eyebrows. That's why it kind of looks confused. Instead of a straight line on the headlights. So that's a sign of an original bumper and not a recreation, is that they do that.
Wow.
I haven't bothered to bend the urethane back into place because I like it being quizzical. It makes people raise their eyebrows. But anyway, yeah. So yes, I own a DeLorean. Seth does too. His was the time machine. It was in Million Ways to Die in the West, and I don't know where that is. I'm sure it's somewhere, you know, in a barn, covered up, waiting for a crazy scientist to find it.
Exactly.
Do something with it. But yep, and that's where I took it to the Gamble house, which you would know from the Back to the Future movies as Doc Brown's house.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah.
I bet it's hard to come in and out of the store without getting stopped. And can I take a picture? And I can't believe you own it.
Oh, yeah. Everybody stops and looks. The worst part about it is, like, you can be around any other car. Like, let's say there's Lamborghinis and Ferraris, and people don't touch Lamborghinis and Ferraris, but everybody walks up and touches your DeLorean. Like I'll go get gas and I'll walk around and someone's sitting in my car.
Oh my gosh.
It's like, I understand that you love the car, but please don't sit in my car. I wouldn't do that to yours.
In the
Oh.
car. Oh wow.
Yeah, in the car.
Oh
Or
my
they'll
gosh.
take pictures. Or it's like I think people feel like because it was in the movie, they own it.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of, it's an interesting experience. But, anyway, it's fun. It's, 40-year-old car that has a 41-foot turning radius and no power
40.
steering.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
There's a guy in
a lot of Popeye arm.
there's a guy in Times Square, Brandon, that sits there with a DeLorean, like right off Times Square, so people just can take pictures of it.
I've seen that guy. I think he charges people for pictures. Though.
He
Does
charges,
he?
yeah, he
Oh my
charges.
gosh.
Yeah.
I got it.
No,
The Knight Rider car, I got it in that one, but I've never seen that.
Yep. So, I don't
Um,
think the Orville will ever go to Netflix. I'll say that much because it's owned by Fox Disney or by Disney Hulu now. So, yeah, I think if it's going to go anywhere, it'll be on a Disney platform.
Yeah.
So,
Do you want to tell us where? I mean, you're not physically there. That's the set of the bay. But that was. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? What we're seeing in your background?
yeah, this was before principal photography. This is the very first day we had brought the shuttle prop in for the new season behind me, and here I'll duck out so it hides me. And you can see that the lighting on the strip underneath Decky is in red alert mode. And so essentially we were kind of sussing out what the look of the ship or the show would be, kind of just getting the stage repainted and up and running. Doug Drexler did the design of the ground decals. And yeah, that was kind of what the shooting stage looks like. You'll notice that like on this side, over here, up in the corner there, the set ends. So everything that's above that line is always a digital recreation. So yeah.
Oh, we're learning movie secrets now.
Yes, that's the idea.
Yeah. Most of these things are very much that kind of movie magic. We only build so high and then the rest of it's digital extension. A lot of the show is set extension and invisible effects in ways that you would never quite grasp. The most obvious one being the new Quantum Core set where we just built some scaffolding people were standing on and then we digitally inserted the entire kind of spherical containment unit that the actual Quantum Core stayed in. That was one of the first things when I started on season 3 with Kit. It was Kit Stolen and myself on the 7th of July 2019, and the very first things that we were designing were I was designing what the new Quantum Core set was going to look like while he was working on engineering, and then I designed the new captain's chairs because I was like trying to help them out because they were trying to figure it out. So. And things that people don't realize, I don't think Seth even realized it, was that the actual captain's chair that Ed and Kelly were sitting in were actually swivel based. So everybody was sitting very stiff forward, and there was actually a button underneath the armrest that you could click, and you could actually just turn side to side. But no one gave them that message, so it never was used. So yeah, you have two captain's chairs that can actually turn left and right. I do want to respond to one of the. They do have cup holders. I do want to respond to one of the comments that's on here about the when did they get rid of the seat belts? Because I've heard that a lot, and I can officially speak to that. We put the seatbelt in the pilot. Remember, it was part of a whole gag where he mentioned that the Krill had come in. There's trying to get him on the shuttle, and he's like, one thing we have that they don't, seatbelts. And then they slammed. The Krill guy flew into the windshield. We had gotten rid of the seatbelts about the third or fourth episode of season 1 because it just didn't look good on camera. The way it was kind of crinkling everybody's outfits. It was just a weird look. And so after that moment, we actually physically removed the seatbelt straps from the seats. So if you watch season 1, you'll actually see where the seatbelts get removed. And that was kind of a thing where we just made a decision to just kind of get rid of it for aesthetic reasons. And the new shuttles obviously didn't have seatbelts because of the whole carryover into that conceit. But that was kind of why the seatbelts left. It was a visual conceit to help make the show look a lot nicer. And as we all know, you wear a seatbelt, it kind of cuts against you in, pretty unflattering way on camera. So,
Brandon, what do you say to this question about the what is the canon answer for where do the shuttles go when there's an event in the
Okay,
docking bay?
so there was a shot that I wanted to do in season 3 that I really wanted to have happen for the space battle in Domino, or at least at one of the points in the show. We had discussed it for a long time, all the way back since season 1, actually, of kind of trying to answer that for the fans as to where the shuttles go, why it feels like there's only 2 shuttles, why does he only have 1 pterodon? And the answer is actually in the image that's in my background. So if you look at the image, you'll see that there's a black stripe around the shuttle, and there's a black stripe around the pterodon. Those were supposed to be graphical indications of lift bays, elevators.
Oh,
So the
wow.
conceit was that the shuttles would actually lift up into position from a deck below. And so I was going to do this really cool shot where we're going to actually see a shuttle come into the dock and then take off and go. But obviously that's a long shot. It kind of kills the pacing of a scene if you have to go. And one of the conceits that we were trying to do was to kind of like explain away that with just one simple shot. That ultimately didn't happen, but that's kind of the idea. The idea is that the shuttles actually, that whole dock drops and goes underground, and that's how we load shuttles in. Think of it like a more advanced version of the old vacuum tubes you would see at a bank, where you would put your money in to deposit, and it would go through the lift tubes to a different area of the bank, and that's how they would actually get your money and send it back. That's kind of the same conceit with what we were doing with it. You'll also notice that, not in this image, but in coverage of the shuttle bay, you'll see sections that say lift on them. Those were actually, there was also going to be a scene in season 1 we never really ended up doing, where those were actually movable lifts that would go under the shuttles and raise them up so you could work on the underside of them. And so there's all these things that were put in place that we never, unfortunately, managed to show people, but it was all thought through. So that's kind of the general conceit, is that that's those black marked areas were the borders of the lift, and this was going to be how we actually had ships arrive and kind of leave in the shuttle bay.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, it's like an aircraft carrier, exactly.
Yeah, and to speak to Ben Thatcher's comment about why are there seats in the back if no one ever sits in them. So I didn't design the season 1 shuttle. I did design the season 3 shuttle, and one of the things that I tried to do was put this new panoramic roof on the shuttle so that we could do higher shots to show everybody standing and kind of get more utilization out of the back seats. But it ultimately is one of those things that doesn't play as well in a picture. Seth likes everybody kind of standing and looking straight at lens and really kind of feeling the presence, like, they're all crowding up, looking out the windshield. But I've tried visually to give reasons for people to not stack so much close to the front of the lens. But hey, they're there. We did use those seats in season 1 when Claire and the kids crash landed on the planet with Isaac. So it has been used in different shuttles, but that's kind of, there's your reason. It just didn't look as good on camera. So
Brandon, before we go too far into the Orville, I wanted to ask you, how did you personally get involved in this career? How did you start, and why did you start?
Well, I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana originally. I moved to LA almost 20 years ago, and my big in was I actually wanted to be a Disney 2D animator. So I trained in 2D animation, using light boxes and pencils and kind of doing the normal thing. By the time I was trying to get a job in the industry, 2D animation had kind of died. So I was at the Noman School of Visual Effects in Los Angeles, and was moonlighting to train this up and coming writer director guy in visual effects because he was interested. His name was J.J. Abrams, and so he was talking about how he had this company, Bad Robot, and he was going to make it a real company with actual employees, and they were going to do some really cool stuff. And he said, hey, I want you to work with me, and I'm like, well, what would my job be? Fresh out of school. He's like, well, it'd be everything I can't do because I'm directing. I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, concept design, storyboards, character design, working in our workshop, doing all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, JJ, I'll be honest with you, I can't do that job. That just seems like way too much. He's like, well, let's try it for a month. If it doesn't work out for you, I'll help you find a new job. If it doesn't work out for me, I'll help you find a new job. And then about 9 years passed, before I left to kind of go on my own. And I guess it worked out, but that was kind of my in. And so one of the first things I had worked on was a little bit of Lost, a little bit of Super 8 and Cloverfield. And then we talked a long time ago, JH and I, about how, it's really, he's like, what got you into this? Same question you asked, PJ. And he was like, I was like, well, honestly, Star Wars was always my thing. Like, I was a Star Wars kid. That was just my full way in. And JJ's like, yeah, me too. That was like one of the big things. And I was like, it sucks that there's never going to be another Star Wars. And then a few years later, all of a sudden we're doing the other Star Wars and rebooting Star Trek. And it was an amazing opportunity. And it's a weird trip to like work on a reboot of Star Wars, a reboot of Star Trek. And there are a lot of people that have opinions about those shows. And you know what? Some of them I share. And it's if you think about it, it's always a hard thing to take something that's established by others and do something new with it, right? I mean, look at Discovery, look at Strange New Worlds, look at even the Orville, right? Everything is inspired. Everything comes from different things. Star Wars is inspired by World War II dogfighting for how they did, the space battles. And there's a lot of people that are going to love things, a lot of people that aren't going to love things. Like Orville started out one way and has matured into kind of the show that it is. So I think what I find myself really fortunate, I feel really fortunate that I've managed to work on those big sci-fi properties for lack of, depending on how you feel one way or the other, your everybody's opinions are obviously really valid, right? Because we all go in with expectations. I would have done it this way. I would have done it that way. That was what was really refreshing about going to work on the Orville, which was it's a whole new property with no laws. The only thing I was told by Fox's lawyers was every ship that I designed had to be vetted to make sure it didn't look like someone else's ship so that they wouldn't get sued for season 1 of the Orville. And because the show was supposed to be, it's supposed to be a prequel, or no, sorry, not a prequel. It was supposed to be like a whole new thing and a parody. It was like, oh, we could get away with it. And everything was like, okay, under parody, you could do certain things. My biggest concern was I'd come off of Star Trek Beyond, and you had Krall, who's Idris Elba's character, who looked a heck of a lot like the Krill. And I made that comment in pre-production. I'm like, are we okay? Is this
I made a video about that, Brandon.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to keep in mind for me. I'd finished Star Trek Beyond, and Luke McDonald, who was the VFX supervisor of season 1 and 2, had called and said, "Hey, so I'm working on the show with Seth MacFarlane. Do you want to work on it?" And I said, "Yeah, as long as it's not a ships in space show, because man, I've done a lot of that recently." And he just started laughing, and then ended up being Orville, and it was a really interesting thing because it's like designing the ships. I could build my own form language, but like I really wanted to go like heavy Greeple, kind of crazy Star Wars aged. The aesthetic was super clean, and so I got my way once in season 2, the finale in 13. The freighter ship was like my okay, I'm gonna do a Star Wars ship. So I Greeble the heck out of that thing. It's like aged it up. I'm like, my pitch honestly for season 3, I was like hoping we could like age the ships as the show progressed. So by the time you got to the end of season 3, you'd actually see like battle scarring on things and, do the whole Battlestar Galactica thing and like make it feel lived in. But it, obviously it's not the aesthetic of the show. And then Seth, we were in the middle of doing 310, the fighter sequence, over the installation, that beautiful sunset sequence. He's like, I really think we need to grunge up the fighters a little. And I'm like, yes. So I'm calling Tommy Tran, who's the VFX super. I'm like, got good news and bad news, man. Seth wants to make the fighters a little more beat up. And so we had this whole conversation, like, how grungy can we go with them? We start putting like dirt on the windows, right? And chipping the paint. Well, yeah, I mean, you figure like, I guess the conceit I had is, okay, the Orville gets a repaint and it gets refit, right? And it's it is what it is. And then you have the fighters are kind of like your utilitarian ships, right? They're always in motion, so they're not going to get as cleaned up. So it would make sense to age them in the Orville universe and let everything else kind of stay clean, because they're heavy use vehicles and they're more military utilitarian.
Brandon, in canon, is the refit of the Orville, it has a lot to do with the preparation for the Kalon, I assume, right?
Yeah, we actually say that in 301.
Okay.
So in the first episode, Jay Lee actually makes a comment about how everything was, when they're on the hull of the ship, about how stuff was state of the art like however long ago, but now we have to deal with it. It's very much a reaction to what happened in the events of Identity Part 2. And so the entire fleet is preparing for this inevitable conflict. Chuck Marvel, while much of the VFX are CG, there's some practical. Which effects we see on screen are practical?
Do you want to talk about that balance that you guys have between?
Well, so the shuttle obviously you see behind me is real. That was physically made. We made one of them. We were originally going to make two, but for budget reasons, we cut building the second one. So anytime you see two shuttles, one of them CG. The pterodon prop was physical. So kind of like here, I can have something queued up for you guys. How many of your guests actually screen share stuff that no one gets to see? Okay, here, let me show you guys. So speaking to that same thing, so part of what I really believe in is there's a hybrid of real and CG to help make these things integrate better. And I feel like even when camera operators, when people can actually see the object that they're trying to shoot, it actually helps you ground it in reality. Like, how would you block a camera around it? How would you move around it? So there's a whole lot of moving towards doing that. The Aurelia, is it Aurelia, the spiny girl from the first episode?
Oh yeah, I
name?
forget the name. You probably know
remember her
better
name.
than I.
She, her makeup was CG modified with the white spines, because there's obviously places where you can't put makeup appliances. So we did some work on that. A lot of the alien, in 311, sorry. Got to keep in mind, I apologize, Domino, which is aired as episode 10 or 9 for you
9,
guys, is episode 10 to me. So I always call it 310. 311 is episode 10 for you. And I don't really know the titles of the shows, unfortunately, because those got added after, when Seth was cutting it. So my brain always just does it by episode number. 309 was the one that is now the novella that Seth released. So 310, which is Domino. So 311, the finale. The three-mouth alien that Claire was actually scanning and doing the tongue bit, 85% of that was practical. And then like the eye blinks were all servos. Like that was actually a prop that Howard Berger built. It was a full animatronic head. And we had the real actor's muzzle revealed for the bottom mouth. And then Tippett did a CG extension for the other two mouths and the tongues. So it was a hybridization of practical and CG. So we did a lot of that for the makeups. Yaphet was actually a real creature that we developed in a lab, and he came out on set, and he actually spoke more like James Earl Jones than Norm Macdonald, which was very weird for me, but he took direction really well. We did run out of a lot of Jell-O though during the shooting of the show, so I am assuming I know where that went. So yeah, again, mix of real and digital. Any other questions?
By the way, Kermit, we see Kermit is in here telling people that he's sad because he saw something he didn't like. Well, then you have to go watch the Orville, and if you haven't watched it, and if you have watched it, do the rewatch. By the way, Brandon, how important is the when it shifts over to Disney Plus on the 10th? And some people say it might be available earlier. How important is it for fans to do a rewatch on Disney Plus?
I think, a lot of us really want to have a fourth season of this show happen, myself included. And from what I understand is it's entirely up to you guys for what we're going to do, right? So the more people that watch it, the more viewers that get. That's kind of like the old adage of putting your money where your mouth is, like ticket sales, butts in seats kind of get things going. So in the modern streaming world, I think the more that people view it, the more that there's an engagement, the more chances we'll have to do this whole ride again. And believe me, I know that just knowing how Seth is, if we did a fourth season, it would take the evolution of season 3 to whatever its natural progression would be. And I think, I would love to play in that world again. And I watch it every time it comes out. I stream it that night at 9 p.m. My time. So I was adding the views myself to it, telling people to do it. So
What's your experience with the finished product, by the way, when you see it, or you've already seen it several times already?
it's
But
weird. Oh, so the way it works for me is I don't actually hear the final sound design or score. I always see the picture. I sit with Seth in color, and we do the color grade with Seth and the DP, Jeff Mygat. So I know, like, to the frame, like what the picture looks like, but I don't know what the sound design or the score sounds like. So for me, I actually was excited to watch the shows and hear what the score did to the picture and what the sound design did. So I got to experience that for the first time every time an episode came out on Hulu, which was really cool. I could have obviously like asked for it, but I was like, you know what, it gives me something that I haven't seen on the show to really kind
to
of
look
geek out
forward
about.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And so it would be Tom and Seth who are probably doing the final.
no, so Tom wasn't part of. So Tom basically took it all the way to the end of the editorial. Tom worked with Seth to cut the teasers that you guys had, but the final. So Seth is working on the score and picture, and then Streamland, who used to be Technicolor, is combining everything for air, and then Hulu is QCing it. So at the end, Seth sees all of it, but Tom would see one section of it, I would see one section of it, which is the picture. The composers would see one section of it. So the only person who really got to see all of it put together was kind of Seth, and he was kind of directing from all of that. So there'd be things where we'd be working on a visual effects shot, and he'd be like, "Hey, can you add like a laser blast to this one scene when Kelly and Talia are fighting, because we're doing a sound cue here?" And that's something we didn't get the memo on, so we'd go back and we'd add it in and things like that. So there's things that'll come up when they're doing the sound mix, or things that'll come up when they're doing the score that'll influence the VFX kind of in reverse. So it's a big synergy of a lot of different departments blending these things together, and sometimes that happens. So
Actually, this is a really interesting question. What kind of projects did you do in your youth that helped you prepare? Like, were you in high school? Maybe were you inclined in certain ways?
yeah, I mean, I've been doing 3D animation and modeling since I was in high school. My father was he had access to some technology. He worked at Intergy Corporation in the South for a while, and we had the first laptops. And I'm that weird generation that's pre-internet and internet, so I kind of grew up with both. So I'm like was born in '82, so I'm kind of like, I know all the things pre-internet, all the mechanical side, and I know all the things post-internet. So I kind of got to play with both sides. So I'd do stop motion, and then I would go into like 3D, and I kind of tinkered and made my own films for a very long time. And then, got to scratch that itch on Orville, where I get to make bigger things. But yeah, preparation-wise, I don't know. I mean, I just kind of made my own things growing up. I still make my own things. I got a 3D printer behind me that's running a part right now for the DeLorean that I want to test out. But I 3D print constantly. I have one little 3D printed technique that we did on these objects that I used for like when we did Cloverfield, the parasites that come in, we 3D printed out their mouthpiece and use that to make a bite appliance that we could actually put the wounds on the back of the shoulders in the proper spots. And that was back when like no one was 3D printing, and we'd be like, the only people with 3D printing were like automotive and aerospace. And I'm sitting here like printing out a little 3D Statue of Liberty head to be like, this is the scene where the Statue of Liberty head rolls. And Star Trek, we were printing out phasers, and it's just very weird things, So 3D printing is kind of like my hobby with photography. Yeah.
I'm going to pull up something that Brandon has put up on Twitter, but as I do so, Netter, do you, Maria or Netter, do you guys have any questions you want to ask while I pull something up?
I wanted to know what was the inspiration for the Orville ship look, as well as the aliens. Are those things where like you're just looking like, I don't know, at a bug or someone, hey, that would make a great alien face, or and for the ship design stuff, like how'd you come up with that ship design?
So I didn't design the original Orville. I did the refit for season 3. The original Orville was actually designed by a lot of different people, had a stab at it. Ryan Church did a pass on it, and I ended up repurposing Ryan's design into the Union Transport. Seth actually came up with the main conceit of what it could look like, and then Luke and a couple other people really nailed the Orville. And then I took the Orville as a conceit, and I built out and designed the rest of the fleet. So the Leviathans, the cruisers, things like that. I had a bigger hand in the Krill and the Mocklins and the Genesi and, you know, the Calivan and all of those ships. And for the Krill, it was the hardest thing because no one could crack what the Krill ships look like. And I was walking down the side of the street, and this is like that kind of, the street light is Boba Fett's Slave One ship design story, or like the hamburger with the olive on the side Falcon story. I'm walking down the street and I see a shadow cast from a light pole with a guy line, and it creates this triangular shape. And I'm like, that's interesting, kind of like a pie slice triangular shape. And that's how I got kind of the stem design, the Krill ship. Nice. And then I kind of extrapolated from that. Alien wise, the person you'd want to talk to is Howard Berger. He did a lot of the alien designs at KMB. The only aliens that I've contributed were Dr. Jorvik. I did the first 3D pass. I designed the alien in the Priya episode who's trying to buy the Orville, the one that's kind of floating in the liquid. Taylor Falconberry from our VFX team did a lot of designs for like the Kraken creature in this season. And Randall was designed by committee. So Fuse Effects did a bunch of passes. We had a bunch of different vendors do a bake-off to see who can come off with a Randall. So we had like 5 different Randalls. And this is the one Seth chose, which I'm not surprised that it kind of looks like a Rancor, but that's kind of where we went. The underwater creature that grabs Kelly was designed by Taylor from our team, and that made it to air. The Comlids had a few passes by Taylor, ended up being, Barnstorm did the final design on that. So there's been a lot of people contributing to the alien and creature design.
Nice.
Did I post that, or did that get?
Yeah,
posted?
you did. You posted this. Yeah.
Okay. It's like, how did that turntable get in the wild? It must have been me.
It's okay if I pull up images that you've already published on Twitter, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Nate asks if someone actually built the Orville, do you think it would be seaworthy?
I have to take it and put it in a bathtub and tell you. So I have to get back to you. I do know that, like, so there's a whole story behind this, but here's the original Pterodon 3D print prototype that I made. And this was the one for season 2 because it was only in there for a few shots. The same overall design. And this is the one that Seth broke the landing gear off of. And he came to me, he's like, Brandon, he was really, really sad. He's like, I broke your thing. I'm like, don't worry about it, I'll fix it. This was printed on a form too. And I'm just using like masking tape to hold the top on. But this Pterodon's seen some stuff. But the Orville, I don't know. I feel like if you put the Orville and you knocked it on the back of a bow, make a good arrowhead.
Oh, by the way, what was as far as the design, I know you said you didn't work on the design of the original Orville, but it was interesting. It's interesting that that there's that commonality in the ship designs and Planetary Union. Do you? Yeah.
So when I built the rest of the fleet, it was trying to play off of that conceit of the Orville. We had like 1 ring and 2 ring, 3 ring. There were a couple of different exploration class vessels that we had. But it was a weird, it's always a weird gotcha with the ships, right? Because you got to think, okay, this is, I'm not going to say a military, but it's a fleet of people that all have a similar aesthetic, right? So you're going to design your vehicles to have a similar look. You won't have a lot of differences. One of the pitches I had for season 3 early on was to change the color palette on the pinstriping of some of the other ships, so you could see, like, here's a red squadron, here's an orange squadron. But it ends up blending in when you look at it from a distance, that it didn't really make sense. So from a design aesthetic, it's like, okay, you take the kind of aquatic look of what the Orville is, and you extrapolate out to a series of ships. At the end of the day, there was probably about 15 different Union Fleet ship designs that were made originally when I did the season 1 pass. I think we've only brought 5 of them to life. So there's more to bring to life should the thing come about it. There's this comment I remember seeing online about how, I think it was either Discovery or Picard. I think it was Picard had that beautiful fleet shot with all of these, ships, and just showed it wasn't like a copy paste fleet. And, people were holding it up, and Doug Drexler worked on Picard, And a lot of what happened to Picard is they pulled a lot of ship assets from the Star Trek Online game, and they pulled a lot of assets that have been around. I mean, you've got 60, 70 years of design and shows and things you can pull from. Orville's got 3. And, part of what you run into is every ship that has to be designed has a budget to it. It has to be sculpted, it has to be painted, it has to be rigged for animation, it has to be lit. So the more and more you do, the more expensive it gets. And we'd already spent a significant amount of money refitting the Orville and every other ship from the show to a season 3 look, that we just didn't have the budget or time really to build a more expansive fleet. There were actually 2, I don't even know if I should say this, but there were actually, why not?
Don't tell anyone.
There are actually two new Krill and Mocklin designs that we were gonna do for season 3 that ended up on the cutting room floor just due to a cost reasons. So maybe those will, if the show keeps going or if we get a continuation, I would really love to bring those back, because they would have been absolutely beautiful to look at and add a little more, I'd say, much needed variation to the Krill looks and the Mocklin looks. But that's kind of the things that happen, right? It's even making the Genesi, right? You had to, that's a whole ship that's really only appearing for like 14 shots in one episode, but because of the look of the Orville in season 3, it couldn't be like as quickly put together as the prior seasons. It had to be really sculpted with panel lines and windows and details. So it's very much a God, I would love to have 400 ships, and God, I would love to not have that photo. You can thank John Cassar for that, because I'm pretty sure he's the one that took that photo and sent it to me.
That's a great picture, by the way. That's the
I love
Krill
it.
fighter, right?
That is it's the Krill fighter gimbal. So you see that little ring on either side looks like a little bit of like steel. That's that's that same. So we put the Pterodon, the Krill fighter, and the Mocklin fighter on the same exact spinning gimbal rig, which gave us side to side. So give you your Dutch roll, your tilt, if you will. And then the camera would counter, and that's how we could actually get a little more dynamism to the shots. And then the yoke of the controls had forward and backwards, up and down, side to side, and a little bit across, so you could get a little bit more movement to it too. One of the things about doing these interior cockpit shots was very much, for lack of better words, like a Star Wars aesthetic. There's a lot more fun, I think, to like seeing the pilots flying, even if you don't know their names, like, unnamed Krill soldier X and unnamed Mocklin soldier Y. It lets you feel like, okay, it's more than just a bunch of CG ships flying around. There's actually some personalities in there, and so we cast 3 different guys for the Krill and 3 different guys for the Mocklins, and it allowed us to kind of build a little bit of like in-universe kind of shots, and it gave it a nice cadence. So we really leaned into that for episode 8 and episode 9 is what you guys saw of that, which is technically 10. And again, I apologize. I'm always going to call Domino 310, and I'm always going to call whatever the ending one was called, 311.
Yeah.
We had a lot of 311 jokes with the band. So it'd always be like, every time we do a 311 review, it'd be like, whoa, amber is the color. Anyway, and now I can't do that anymore. But, and people are like, well, where's the missing episode? It's the one that's the novella 309, the one that people don't believe Seth would write an episode without Orville people in it until the end. And it very much is exactly what was scripted. So you should watch it.
Brandon, really quick, several people in the chat have asked and recently been asking about do you think there'll ever be a technical manual for the Orville?
I can't comment on that. I don't know. I know that there have. I can't comment on that.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Of course. It's a logical question for people to ask, especially for the Trekkies.
John's conversation. You have not seen a physical model of the Orville since season 2. The only physical model of the Orville that ever existed in CG shot or in shots was in the original opening for season 1 and season 2, and in about 15 shots of season 1. We actually built a CG double in season 1 because the physical model, unfortunately, does not hold up in close-up shots. It, it was only a 6.5 foot model, not even. I think it's like a 5.5 foot model, and so it doesn't have the actual physical ability to get close up shots on it without it falling apart. We would have had to build like a 20-foot model to make that happen. So pretty early on, we realized that. So in season 1, we were butting up CG Orville. And then what we did is we took some of the physical model shots from season 1 and moved in the season 2 Orville on top of it. So we could recreate the shot as if it was the same as the physical model shot. And then for season 3, part of what happened in the refit is I went back and, drew out about 4,000 panel lines that VFX sculpted into physical panels on the ship. And that gave us the tertiary detail we needed for close-up shots. And then what we also did was, in the process of doing that, there were some sins in the original Orville that I didn't like the escape hatch doors were massive. They were like the size of 2 shuttles stacked, and they weren't human scale, but yet they were doors. So I went in and I shrunk all of those exterior hatches to appropriate scale and added in areas like where would the escape pods be? Where would certain panels be? So there was a whole bunch of additional changes made to right some wrongs in the scale to help this go together. Because if you notice, season 3 has a lot of outside the ship going in shots that we've never had before, where we're skinning a whole new exterior on, because the stage windows aren't actually the same shape as the exterior windows in the ship. No one ever reconciled that. So we had to build specialized, let's call them like transitional archways. And you'll see that even in the beginning of season 3 when, Marcus is running around the corridors, and we had to kind of fix a lot of those things. So yeah, that's kind of the big thing. And then the other thing that we built was, sorry.
No, go ahead, Brennan. Sorry.
Oh, the other thing we built was I had redesigned the way that the specularity on the ship works. So, the Enterprise has the opalescence pass, right? Which is what everybody who's a model builder knows. When you make like an Enterprise, you put like 3 different opalescent textures on. I like that like subtle water pass. That was awesome. From Troy and Netter. That was like the coolest thing. It's like one side went this way. I heard the pour. But anyway, so the when you do like the Pantones, when you do kind of like the Panto process, and you do the Aztecing on the Enterprise, you've got these different levels of opalescence, like they give it that kind of sheen. And Star Wars has like the greebles and the grunge and all that. Well, so for Orville, what we did is we built an actual, I'll call it like, think of it like a tiger's eye or a cat's eye gemstone, where you notice how when you turn it, there's that opalescence that kind of goes across the surface. So in certain angles of the Orville, when you're facing away from the lens, I had a camera facing based opalescence happen, which gave it a purplish green hue on the far edges of the ship. So you'll notice that if you watch it, when the camera pans by at certain angles of incidence, you'll see the sheen that kind of falls off, similar to like a tiger's eye or a cat's eye. And that was my way to kind of show people the shielding on the ship. And kind of like make a call out to that, but also say, hey, Orville's got the Aztecing patterns with their opalescence, and Star Wars has their greebles. Star Trek has their Aztecing. Orville has its opalescence. And that's kind of the new signature we put into the hull design of all the Union ships. The Krill had it for a while. That's the title card for episode 8.
Yeah, actually, the title. Okay. We actually see the. I'll blow this up a little bit. We actually see the shuttle here. This is actually a screenshot, and they actually see the shuttle flying in here. I got to say that the people, everybody said that the female Moclan colony planet was spectacular in so many ways.
It was pretty awesome. They took what they designed in season 2, and Stephen Lineweaver and Robert Strohmeyer and Kit Stolan and the whole production design team really built this like much more involved version of like Havina's Village for season 3 that was pretty cool. But if we're gonna show stuff, wait, let's see. What do I have here? Do I have something fun to show?
Yeah. By the way, just in case anybody's wondering, I do, because this is brand new, I barely show anything on the first, this first We just had the season finished, so we'll do more in-depth stuff down the road. But yeah, if you want to share anything, Brendan.
Let's see. I'm going to share. Let's see. I have to hit the button.
Shot, though. I love the colors and everything.
You know what the best shot I think of the entire season is? If you want to have like an Orville flex, is the one where Dolly Parton's music's playing and we're just coming across the whole of the Orville.
I'm looking for that right now. Actually, I think I have it almost.
But hold on here, I'll show you this. So when I was talking about the opalescence earlier in the ship, let's see. This is the CG enhanced body. But where is that thing? It's right around. Nope, earlier. There it is. Okay. Let's see. There you go. See the opalescence here. So we rebuilt the front end of the bridge. We leaned into the glass conceit. And this is where you'll see it. See these little bits of green? Oh, you can see my mouse. Great. See the little bit of green flecks here? That's our opalescence. So as the ship actually passes by, you'll see on the glancing angles a little bit of a greenish purple shimmer happen, and that's kind of our little subtle nod to the shielding on the ship.
Yeah.
So you can see it's just a very subtle bit of green, and it gets, depending on the angle, it gets a little bit more viable than others. But this is a really fun scene to do. There you go. This is a good one. You'll see it. So it's really hard to tell, but right there. So right here, the green flecks kind of peek in, and that's our little opalescence pass. And then one of the new things we did in season 3 is there's normally the I call it the 1/1000, 2/1000, 3/1000 jump. That's our quantum jump, the 3 beats. We added a 4th beat in season 3 because I was trying to justify the windows that don't make any sense, the giant porthole windows that are not represented anywhere on the ship. So I went ahead and you can see the opalescence over here on screen right. So I went ahead and pitched the conceit of right before we go to quantum, all of these are essentially exhaust vents. So the ship actually gasses out before it goes, and that's how it kind of lets go of the excess material before the quantum bubble forms. So on the 3rd jump, you'll actually see all of these quantum exhaust events bloom. So watch, I'll just go frame by frame here. So see how they're starting to bloom? You see how they bloom up right there?
Yeah.
On this area? So that is now our new effect for season 3. Still in the same timing, but it allows the quantum jump. And then we made the quantum tunnel a little bit more visible. So that was kind of the conceit. Because in season 1, we actually drew the quantum bubble out, which I think didn't really fit the conceit of what this show could have, of what it would be. So we kept the quantum bubble here. See the little distortion ripple that happens? So this was the shot that actually we used to establish the conceit of the new quantum look. And then we carried that over for all the races. So when you get to like even the Kalon, you'll run into the same thing.
I gotta say that seeing that in slow motion is quite impressive.
Yeah.
The other thing is this was the one shot. So everybody also asked where are the front lasers on the ship. So this was the shot where I designed the conceit of these are not actually windows in the front of the Orville. These are actually the focusing array that actually allows it to shoot in 180 degrees. And so it basically just conforms all the energy to one point. So if you wanted to shoot off to the right of the ship, you would just conform to this point. So this was a shot that kind of detailed what the actual front vents on the ship were and what the purpose was.
Wow.
So again, it's the conceit of everything. Everything was rethought through for season 3 to try to have some sense to it. So again, that whole quantum gassing out, right? So you'll see that the krill ships actually, their quantum rings, instead of igniting, they actually start gassing out nearly immediately, while the secondary ones streak out, and that's what causes the new krill quantum effect, which bends the light tunnel and actually allows it to streak out in the distance. So everything was, again, always kind of, just rethought to try to kind of put some method to the madness of this.
Wow.
I didn't want to, and it's weird to be so oddly specific about it, but I kind of like, if I set the ground rules, at least in my head, and I explain it to the vendors and we have a rhythm to it, then we can justify what we're doing with it, right? Like I only needed that one shot of the energy banks of the Orville focusing to fire to tell the audience, that's how the ship fires. So now when you see in the distance, this is what it's doing, you know? So,
Wow.
yeah. Anyway,
Impressive.
sorry, there's a whole bunch of talking.
Well, thank you. No, thank you for sharing that, because I mean, to have you explain it to us,
Mhm.
and I think that the people are watching it, and they're getting a sensation and a feeling and an emotional reaction to watching it, but to have you explain it to us is on a whole other level.
I was going to say those are the best takeoffs and landings I've ever seen. And the one thing that's impressive is that you didn't have an actual script in your hand to read from, but the action that comes from, well, I didn't want to give spoilers, but at any point when they all gather, like a whole bunch of them together, it's so expressive. It still says something without words. And that to me is impressive, you know, to be able to communicate what is happening with all of that. So that I had to say, applaud you for, because I mean, I was like, my jaw was dropped the whole time. It was impressive.
It was, thank you. You can thank Seth for writing, Seth and Andre and Brandon and David and Cherry for writing the scripts, because, you know, there's one of the things that really helped us with the third season, and this is before the pandemic came in, right, was one of the things that I had asked was, could I have a pre-visualization team to start the previs while before we're shooting, so that we could go into a situation where we knew what to show the actors. This is what's outside the window. This is what's coming. Show the directors, you know, this is what we're doing. So Seth, and you know, really stepped up and gave us copies, or gave me copies of the writer's drafts. And so I could use the writer's drafts of the scripts, which had the broad strokes in place, to start visualizing what the show looked like. And so that was always obviously like oh yeah, that's the Nick's space station. So Nick Hyatt did the initial design on this arachnid space station, which, by the way, this was the hardest thing to do, because like you're now visualizing space without stars. So the only thing we had to do is we cheated in. Oh, that's the previous version. Yeah, so this is kind of the pitch that Tom and I would put to Seth, or that we would show the actors, like, this is what's coming. And the way Seth tends to work is that the previs animation is essentially the final animation minus laser blasts. So we would build sequences based on that and use that to help kind of show, you know, what we're actually trying to build and what we're trying to actually show story-wise. I mean, one of the things I really like to do with the Orville that I think is something that a lot of space shows don't really do as much is I like to respect the viewer and have you guys go on the journey with me. So if you'll notice, a lot of the space battles, starting with, you know, last season, I tend to try to, you know, and Seth and Tom really embrace this, is, you know, make it so that you're part of it. It's not just like a random cutaway to space battle. It's like you can follow the Orville, or it gets introduced, or this piece goes to this piece, and you can move with these sections, and you can be part of it and not just be a passive viewer. Like, you're like, okay, I know what's happening. Oh, they're going closer to the planet. Yeah, this is about to be a thing, you know? And that's, I think, something really, you know, gives you the ability to follow a moment. So, like, you know, when Seth gets involved, you know, Tom and I are always trying to build the energy up for the moment, and then Seth comes in and puts, you know, he's just so phenomenal at like tying all these pieces in and helping make this stuff just sing. And I think that's what's great about it, is he, you know, Seth is the type of person that allows his creatives to express something, to pitch an idea, to do it, and then he can come in and piggyback off of that and elevate it to a way that lets us just kind of build the world together. Chuck said, did Orville have a show Bible? Yes, the Orville did have a show Bible. Taylor Falconberry, who was our kind of, you know, mistress of all for the visual effects department, she actually was the person in charge of the show Bible. And the show Bible in season 2 was really important because we had a couple other directors come in to say, this is the conceit of the show, these are what the different races are. But we did actually have, you know, a very involved show Bible. Now, when season 3 came around, we didn't need a show Bible as much because, you know, it was Seth directing with John. So they knew the show back and forth. So that was kind of one of the things. Yeah,
Brandon, I'm sorry, when we look at Isaac, are there any moments where you guys are adding to Isaac?
Yes.
CGI?
There's a lot of CG invisible effects on Isaac. There's certain angles of the helmet that Mark's wearing where you can kind of see through and see his face. So we would just go in and kind of clean that up, so you wouldn't actually see Mark's face. We didn't want to break the illusion of the man in the suit. So we're not doing a full CG Isaac. The only full CG Kalons we had were at the wedding. But we had, if you look at most of the coverage, anytime you see the tight shots, those are real Kalons. We had about 12, 13 physical suits. And so we used those for everything close to lens and the digi-Kalons in the back. So
Wow.
that
Troy
show
is-
Bible can never be made available online. So that's not going to happen. Where the nipple
Yeah, for
tassels
sure.
are practical effect or CG. The nipple tassels were CG popping out for that one shot, and they were practical for every other scene.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Troy, did you
Yes.
want to ask any questions?
Well,
Brooke's favorite scene.
first thing I wanted to say, Brandon, obviously I'm a huge fan of what you do, but now that I see you in front of the camera, I can't help but think you're the spitting image of one of the party guests from episode 211. It's amazing. I don't know if anyone's mentioned that to you before.
Oh, God. Yeah, and also the name of the store that she works in, that she's selling, is called Fayette. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks, Steven. That was so we're shooting, and they didn't have enough. The extras they had didn't look young enough to be at the party. So a whole bunch of us stood in, like Delane from Visual Effects was there. And so literally in those shots, I'm holding, so we use an app called Q-Take, which allows us to actually, I can be on my iPhone, and I can see all the cameras. So there's a bunch of extras standing there, and I'm just like, okay, I'm not dealing with this. So I'm looking down at my phone, waiting for the camera to pan up to see me. And then I put my phone down, and I'm acting like I'm talking to people, and then I pull my phone back up again for those 3 shots, because I'm also trying to VFX suit the show. So I'm watching to make sure they don't shoot off the roof of the set and make sure that they're not catching weird reflections. So like trying to do my job while standing in the shot. I'm just like, oh God, why am I doing this? And honestly, my uniform for most of the times are black t-shirt and jeans. So I guess that kind of plays, but yes, I was in the show for 2 shots.
A hot minute.
But I do want to and this isn't something you need to comment on. I know you can't comment on, but just something maybe you can take back with you from the fans. Things like a technical manual or encyclopedia or any of that, that would sell. That would be merch. That would be, cha-ching. So let them know that.
Trust me, they know that.
Okay.
They
Now
very,
you
very
need to
much
make it-
know that.
Yeah, now you need to make an Isaac doll that actually does
Yes.
all that.
Yeah, exactly
So now,
right.
was that really that actor doing that dance, or was that a different person in the Isaac costume?
No, that was a dancer that they had come in and do that dance.
No.
Gotcha.
And it was done to Darude's what is that, Sandstorm? Ba-da-da-da-da, that was actually what was playing while we were on set.
That's
I
funny.
think they did a remix of that for the actual show.
Brandon, I
Oh,
wanted to ask you. Obviously, Dolly looks great, but you guys did a little bit of CGI for her.
Yeah, we took 30 years off of her.
She loved it.
She loved every
She
second of it.
loved
So that is Dolly in the real world. If you look at that image and then look at the episode, around the time we were doing this, Seth was like, can we de-age her and make her look like she did in the 90s? And I said, well, I mean, I have a theory of how I could probably make that work and not make it look like Mark Hamill, young Luke
Yeah.
Skywalker from The Mandalorian as a CG death mask. So sorry, Lucasfilm, please don't hold this against me. And if there's ever a Star Wars show and you want to hire me, it's okay. I just know the technology was nascent and I am hireable. So what I realize is when you're doing de-aging, there's a couple different methodologies, right? One is one's a full CG face replacement, like young Mark Hamill from Mandalorian. One is digital makeup, like you think of X-Men: Days of Future Past, or where they kind of de-aged Patrick Stewart, which ends up looking kind of waxy.
Yeah.
The third option, the third option is kind of a let's call it a mix of bleeding edge technology and traditional methodology. So what we did for Dolly is we actually trained an artificial intelligence for 2 months on full footage of what Dolly looked like from the 90s. And it spent the time going through. Dolly's people gave us access to all of her archives, so we actually managed to get access to interviews. And keep in mind, a lot of these things were shot on film.
Mhm.
A lot of these things were shot in standard definition. So the way we approached it is very, very specific rules. Could not get extreme close-ups on Dolly because we didn't have the resolution to support it, but we could get a decent close-up, and as much as possible keep her playing to the lens, because a lot of the artificial intelligence don't like side profiles, right? So we trained and trained and trained, and you could call it kind of like a version 2 of a deep fake, an AI that only understood Dolly Parton's face.
Wow.
To the level of only understood Dolly Parton from 1992 to 1997's face. And that was the range that we had to hit. And the other trick was, how do you do that and maintain the soul? Well, for me, the most important thing are the eyes. Most of the performance, most CG characters, the hardest thing to sell to make something emote is the eyes. There's micro expressions that we do. There's, the way your eyes crinkle, the way your eyes dart, that are really, really important. And, how do you actually train that in a way that can work? You can't. So what we did is we kept Dolly's real eyes, and we kept Dolly's part of Dolly's real eyebrows, and everything else from her eyes down was a full CG. We'll call it like deepfake 2.0, because her nose has changed, her upper and lower lips have changed, her teeth have changed. But you needed to be able to get something that actually felt like a real Dolly. So that's the 90s Dolly image, right? That's what she looks like. And, the thing was, how do you do this and also have her be able to sing, also have her be able to emote? So it was a giant science project. We had a 50-50 shot it was going to fail and blow up in our face. And the best thing I could possibly have ever hoped for was that all everybody talked about was that we shot it in Tennessee and in LA. And no one talked about the fact that she's de-aged. Everybody just said, oh, Dolly looks great. Not realizing that she is in her 70s.
Mm.
That is a 70-year-old person on the screen right now that does not look 70. And she doesn't look plastic, and she emotes, and you can see her tongue and her teeth, and the movement all feels natural.
Brandon, just so you know, I didn't mention it for a while because I didn't want to say anything out of respect for her until we knew that it was de-aged. So I didn't want to.
No, she was all about it. She even said it. Did you see her Twitter post?
Yeah, we saw them. Yeah.
People, she's talking about all the effects that made her look younger, but everybody was thinking that she was talking about the fact that we shot in 2 different parts of the country. And so again, it was a giant risk to try to do it. And the worst case scenario would have been we would have just used the real footage of her. And I have actual versions of what the real footage looks like that I will never share with anyone, nor I think anyone should, because, out of respect to Dolly and out of respect to the process, I think we succeeded in what we tried to do.
Yeah.
And that was the goal. So the idea was to get her somewhere in the 90s. So that is what you're seeing on the screen here. Is kind of,
well, that's what I heard a lot from people. They were like, wow, she looks great.
Right.
When Netter and I were watching the episode, we both said to each other, I can't believe she looks that good. Never once dawned on us that there was any, after effect. So, I mean, and that's actually true of, I think, the whole show. So many shots we see and we're like, I can't tell if that's a miniature or if that's CG, or I said, these guys are geniuses. Well, there you go. That's the takeaway from tonight.
Everything's seamless. It's wonderful.
And that was part of and you got to keep in mind too, the pandemic happened, we had shot a few episodes and we came back and there's certain episodes that were shot pre-pandemic, all of the crowds for Krill, everything with Talea speaking to the crowds, that was pre-pandemic. But all of the crowds at Charlie's funeral, the other half of the Bortus concert was all shot post-pandemic. And so, we only had the ability to put 100 people in at a time. And we had to, but the terrifying thing for us is we came back in October of 2020. There was no vaccine. you're literally standing on a set and there's this thing that's killing people, and everything is telling you, do not be in an enclosed space with more than 1 or 2 people in your pod, and you're in an enclosed space with 240 people every day getting tested 7 days a week. And, we were one of the few shows that was really fortunate that everybody was so on board. We never shut down due to COVID. Even before vaccines, everybody was so specific that we just powered through it. And that's when you've got a really phenomenal group of people who are in it for the art, who are in it for the craft. And there's just, and Seth pushed back against a lot of reasonings that other people had. He really tried to make it a safe environment for everyone.
And you guys even got tested on days off, right? I think.
Yeah, we got tested Monday through Sunday. I was tested 7 days a week. Because the conceit was you would know you could contract the disease on day 1, and by day 3 you're contagious. And so the conceit was we were testing at a higher level of fidelity than most places, so we could catch within day 2 when you were potentially going to contract, coronavirus and be able to do stuff. And the hardest thing is, when you're working the show, fans are impatient, everybody's upset that it took so long, and it's like, it was terrifying. I'm not going to kid you. I was in a situation where, like, if I would have gotten the disease, I would have knocked out the whole show, because I'm next to Seth, I'm next to the DP. Contact tracing would have taken us out. So you feel a little bit like you've got a scarlet letter on your back, and you're trying, like, to get groceries, and you have to tell your loved ones, like, I'm sorry, I can't see you. And it's a scary thing. Currently the way Hollywood's working is the mask rules are in place until 2025. So I still go to work every day with a mask. I still get tested 4 days a week. It hasn't ended for anyone in Hollywood. We are still in it as of 2020. So it's a weird situation, but we got through it. I'm sorry the show got delayed. That was, I would say, our fault in visual effects. As you can see, there was a lot of visual effects shots, and we did not have enough time to finish it. So that's why the first push happened. There's talk at one point about splitting the season up, but Seth didn't want to do that. And I think he was right to not do that. So you guys got to see what we intended. It just took us a couple more months.
You know what? It was definitely worth the wait. Like Ensign Turco says.